This question is on EPD ratio of two independent lines. An insurance company currently writes one line of business with the given probability distribution of incurred losses. It plans on writing two independent lines of business with the same loss probability distribution and buying a 50% quota share reinsurance. Currently, the company targets 5% EPD ratio. Assets are invested in risk-free rate at 0%. We are asked to calculate the reduction in capital by adding a second line of business and buying reinsurance. We need to find out the current capital, but the asset amount is not given. Let's back out the asset amount from the target EPD ratio. Sum product probability and losses to get the expected losses. Current EPD is target EPD ratio 5% times expected losses equal to 1700. Next, we assume asset is between the second largest loss, 40,000, and the largest loss, 60,000. So there will be deficit only when loss is 60,000. Set the EPD 1700 equal to loss probability times deficit 60,000 minus A. A is equal to 51,500. It's consistent with our assumption. The current capital is asset minus expected losses equal to 17,500. Now, we need to construct the probability distribution for two lines. For each loss in the first line of business, there are three possible loss scenarios in the second line. We can create all loss combinations by combining the first loss in the table with itself and the rows below it. For 20,000 loss in the first line of business, add 20,000 for second line and multiply by 50%. Use absolute cell reference for the 20,000 loss for the first line and drag down the formula 2 rows for the other two losses in the second line. Using the same approach for the probability. Next, we work with the 40,000 loss in the first line of business. Similarly, use absolute cell reference for the 40,000, but this time you only drag down the formula once because there's only one loss below 40,000. Use the same approach for the third loss, but this time we don't need to drag down the formula because there's no loss below it. Now, we have to account for number of ways of making the combination. When loss is identical for both lines, there's only one way to make the combination. But when loss is different, there are two ways. For example, for combined losses of 30,000, the first line could have 20,000 loss and second line has 40,000, or the other way around. That's why we multiply 2 with the probability. Now, multiply number of ways with probability to get the total probability. Lastly, combine the probability for losses with the same amount, in our case, 40,000. Use SUMIF or do it manually. A reasonability check is the probabilities sums up to 1. Sum product probability and losses to get expected losses. Multiply it with 5% to get EPD equal to 1700. Next, we assume there's only deficit in the last loss scenario when loss is 60,000. Set EPD 1700 equal to loss probability 0.04 times deficit 60K minus A. A is equal to 17,500. It's not consistent with our assumption. Now, assume deficit in the last two scenario. A is 41,875. Is consistent with our assumption. New capital is asset minus expected losses equal to 7,875. Capital reduction is 9,625.